Good afternoon, or morning, or evening. Pardon me, or any whatever time it is for you. This is the internet, after all. You're listening to Recruiting EQ, episode number 83. That's a high number. I don't remember doing 82 of these. I know I say that at the beginning of every episode, but I do not. Luckily, there's evidence in the form of recordings. This is our success and wellness panel on Recruiting EQ, something we started in April, I want to say. So it's been like 6-7 months. Great reaction from everybody. I feel like it's a struggle. The struggle between success and wellness is real in 2025. I called this episode Silver Linings Playbook, mostly because I just like that movie. Is that fair? I guess it's my show, so I can do whatever I want. But I just like that movie and was thinking about it. I would love to bring up why I think it's an example of the whole, like, how we can approach success and wellness. But it doesn't really matter if you've seen it or not. Let's do this anyway. Thank you so much to my panel speakers, one of whom got added to the list to bail me out, like, I don't know, minutes before, it feels like. So thank you for that. So thank you, Shantas and Lori, for being here today. If we can go around the room, maybe if you can introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do, that would be lovely. Who would like to go first?
Go ahead, Lori.
Okay, I'll go first. Yes, I did get added very last minute today, but I have been on this podcast before.
Yes, you have.
And I do enjoy sitting down with Rick and discussing this kind of hot button topic on how to balance success with wellness. My name is Lori, and I work in the staffing space. I'm in sales, and I find it's always a little bit of a struggle balancing, trying to get ahead, but also staying, healthy and well.
For sure. And I feel like it is for like everybody, but in staffing, maybe more than most.
Maybe underrated statement. But my name is Shantas Wong. I am a staffing professional as well. I've been in the business for many, many years. I won't say exactly, it'll age me. Right now I'm currently a business development manager. But previous, I had sort of ran teams and in the recruitment space as well.
Awesome. And thank you for being here. How do you, right at the top, how do you feel about this whole topic in general, Jantis? Like, of the, the kind of attitude that you see you run into out there a little bit, that it is like impossible almost to manage your success and your wellness in something like what we do, staffing and recruiting. I often feel like it's like, well, that's it. You just got to make the choice. It's one or the other. It's almost like give away your mental, physical wellness in exchange for success. How does all of this sit with you? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, the immediate thing that comes up to me is that if you're new in the business per se, I mean, yeah, you're kind of getting your grounding, you're understanding what's needed and all that stuff. This industry is certainly, when you have the business, you chase the business, you basically have to be that way, sort of thing. So I would find that maybe in my latter years, I mean, yes, there's always pressure and stress, at various times, just based on the time of year and all of that, but you kind of acclimatize to it a little bit. So I find that now, having, a certain amount of experience in this space, you're just able to sort of manage your time a little bit better. But there are times, absolutely, where, you're working 12-hour days and, you just have to do it because you want to chase that particular sale or close a deal or what have you. So I know that's a long-winded answer, but I would say, it's relative, I would say, but I would probably say that with all the recruiters and professionals in the staffing space, I don't think I've ever heard of anyone who is incredibly successful without having to put in some extra time.
Yeah. And then it's good that you bring up time, because I think that's what a lot of people think, right? They think that time equals wellness. So if you're putting in a lot of time into something, it means that you're necessarily stressed and drained. And giving up your time equals giving up your well-being. I don't know that it's that simple, though, right? Like, I think there's a lot more to it than that. What do you guys both feel on that front?
I was thinking when Shantas was talking, success, I see what you're saying in terms of as you mature into the business and you know how to prioritize so you can balance a little bit better. But I also think your definition of success changes, when you're younger.
Totally.
You're a little bit more idealistic and running after the title and the paycheck. And, there's a certain ladder that you need to climb. I think once you get into life itself and living it, success can mean different things and reaching that title and reaching that, magical number that you're looking for in terms of salary. So I think for me, my definition of success has changed. In the last 20 years or so in terms of where I started out to where I am now. But I think it's something that is always being reevaluated as well. So in terms of balancing that wellness, it's okay, well, what is success? And if I'm happy, is that success? Versus, I need to reach a certain point in my career to feel successful.
Totally. And I mean, I guess it begs the question, maybe let's even talk about a little bit about that. What is success? What is wellness? It's relative, right? So what do success and or wellness separately mean to you guys?
I'm going to jump in. I just remember when I did personal coaching, I had a coach, a career coach a few years ago, and he made me kind of go through my top 10 descriptive words or things that were important to me. And the two things that he said were kind of non-negotiable to leave at the top was health and love. You can be ambitious, grateful, creative, whatever other kind of adjectives you wanted to describe, but you need, number one is your health. If you don't have health, all those other things that you can achieve, you're not really going to be able to sustain it. Yep. So kind of putting yourself first, that I think that started changing my definition of, what is it that I want? And I want to be healthy, and I want to be around long enough to enjoy the success that I create. And then also making space for love in your life, because love is a foundation for what you build everything. And that's, we think of romantic love, but just love in general, love for yourself, love for your community, your family. So I do think wellness and success are interchangeable in some way, that you need to have some sort of wellness, physical wellness, mental wellness, in order to reach success and sustain success.
Yeah. Shantas, how do you feel about them?
Yeah, just piggybacking off of you, Lori, you hit the nail on the head essentially, but, in defining, what is success and what makes you happy, I would say, in your career is a huge defining factor. Mine has changed over the years.
Mm-hmm.
When you're younger, you want to get hungry and, you want to make as much money as humanly possible. As you evolve, happiness is really, I wouldn't say change, but, in talking about, the managing of stress and everything, it really came to fine tuning exactly why I'm in this business and what really makes me tick when it comes to it. And that I find that passion, for me, particularly, it's how do I leave every single caller encounter? How does that make someone feel? What is their impression of me? All of that. So I think that purpose essentially drives my happiness in a lot of ways. If I'm losing that, and if I'm losing what the core values of, who I am as a recruiter and, in business, then I find that the stress really off scales. And so I'm able to get stressed faster. And, if I'm more so chasing things that, are less or farther away from my core values. So, speaking to that, I think, it ebbs and flows throughout, your career, your life. But meditation is very good for managing your stress.
Yeah.
Meditation is very good. I spent a lot of time, very stupidly thinking that meditation was cheesy, because I think it was introduced to me, having grown up in the 80s and 90s, right? In movies and things, it was always you kind of laughed at people in cool movies and whatever else for being like that, for being into meditation and sort of what was considered hippy dippy kind of stuff. And then, working in sales forever and whatever else, like sales people in particular, those cultures, less so now, but like in the, 25 years ago, they would make fun of that stuff, right? It's like you were soft core or whatever else. And it's just kind of like, oh my God, what a difference it makes in your clarity and presence of mind, ability even to do a sales job. It's amazing like how salespeople have historically written off meditation as a practice to help you better yourself.
Well, I'm not even sure what the stats are, particularly around the anxiety rates, of individuals in sales and recruitment, but I've seen it across the floor. It's basically worn on your face, when you're struggling a little bit. So yeah, I would say, meditation is awesome for being, creating a little bit more of a calm inner.
Yeah. And I would say too, when it comes to meditation, sometimes we have this idea of meditation that you need to be, on a yoga mat and your eyes need to be closed. You can get into a meditative state by taking a walk, like leaving your cell phone at home and just being with yourself. And I do think that that's kind of key, whether it's a meditation practice or just somehow to offset that level of stress when you reach it, because in sales and staffing, take out staffing altogether. But if you're in any sort of sales, sales is extremely high pressure, especially right now. We're in a bit of a recessionary times or financial constraints. A lot of companies, there's still many layoffs. We're heading into the end of the year, budget pressures and constraints. It's a good idea to find a practice that works for you, because if you have this idea of a meditation and I need to take 30 minutes away from my computer, it may not work for you. But if you find something where, hey, I'm just going to go for a quick walk around the block and clear my head, if it works for you, that's going to be better than a particular, like having to name it a meditation per se.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's it. It's like sort of finding what works for you, like finding your own version of what works as a meditation, how you can work it into your life realistically on a regular basis, whether it's 10 minutes or 2 hours, you know what I mean? Like, but tailoring it to yourself and going on that journey, giving yourself permission to be like, all right, what's my version of this is like huge and very powerful stuff. Right. I almost feel like I wish someone had said, no, but you get to make up your whole version of it for yourself when I was younger. And I'm like, oh, I'm listening. You know what I mean? It would have changed the whole game.
Right.
Well, I called this episode Silver Linings Playbook, and then I ended up going on a really fun weekend to New York and getting stranded there because of all the government shutdown, flight cancellations, and I had to take a very long journey home, unexpected journey in the snow, very nice journey in the snow on a train for 13 hours back home yesterday. So I do not have as much preparation around the Silver Linings Playbook analogy as I would have hoped, but the crux of it is, and I mean, again, I know, Lori, you said it's been a while since you've seen it. Shantis, I don't think you had seen the whole movie. It's not that important that you've seen the movie, but the point being here is here's a guy, Bradley Cooper, who his wife has left him because he had a huge outburst, right? Violent outburst. He has anger management issues. He's super stressed. He's super wound up. But he was trying to fit himself into this life beforehand, not talking about tiptoeing on eggshells with his dad. Robert De Niro has OCD, so it's an OCD house. It's a very stifling house. In his relationship, it's very stifled. So he's kind of like trying to fit himself into something where he doesn't really fit in. And what happens is he explodes and in these rage outbursts. So he goes to anger management and recovery and all this kind of stuff. And he's trying to figure it out. And all he wants is to get his old life back. He wants to, because he thinks, I lost my wife and my whatever else. I just need to go to anger management and then go back to that. Doesn't realize that the situation is what was causing a lot of the anger and the stress and the whatever, right? Going back to his family dynamic and not confronting that as well. Meets Jennifer Lawrence, who disrupts everything and ends up having to confront his dad and blah, blah, blah. She sort of blackmails him in a way into getting into this dance contest with him. So he's learning how to dance because of what I'm doing, a lot of physical activity, and then finds this whole other calm from the physical activity, from a different kind of relationship, from confronting his parents, blah, 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 and realizes, why the hell was I going back to this life that I thought was the right life for myself? When really here he has all this boundless energy and calm. Like he finds his calm from getting rid of a lot of the stressors. And it just feels like, in a way, what we're doing when we're recruiters. We talk to people. If we see them super stressed out, they're like, no, I just need to do this, I just need to do this, I just need to do this, and we're like looking at them being like, there's a lot of other options out there. Right? Like, you don't seem very calm right now. Maybe there's another version of this that's better suited to you, so that you're not freaking out all the time. Right? How does that sit with both of you guys in terms of what you're seeing out there?
Well, I would say, in context, while Shantas, you're kind of thinking, a lot of times with life, when we're going through challenges, we don't know what's on the other side, So in this situation with the movie, it's, he didn't know what was on the other side as he was working through it. And right now, there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the job market, uncertainty like globally, economically, in the job market itself. So it can be a little bit unsettling, that not knowing, that uncertainty. But, in the end of the day, I think if we're holding out that it's going to be better, it may be more of a realignment, or what's that silver lining. And I almost was, when you're telling me the story of the train, or telling Shantas and I, and my question is what was your silver lining, Rick, to that, having to take a 13-hour train ride instead of taking probably like a 2-hour flight into Toronto? Like, where, I think that's the whole context, is what is the silver lining to the stresses that we're going through in life. And sometimes we don't know until we look back a little bit in reflection.
Yeah.
It's hard to know when you're in it.
Yep. Agreed.
I agree. It also makes me think of that one saying that everything you want is on the other side of fear. So oftentimes, when we're in the thick of something, and it's your routine and you've been doing it for years, sort of thing, it feels like it should be that, like, that is your happy place, or quote unquote happy place, just because that's what you're used to. It's your routine. It's, we're suckers to of course wanting what is natural and known to us, essentially. But once that is shaken up, I can absolutely see that, you're like, oh, I didn't know I like that. I really like that. I have that hobby now. I do this, thing that I never thought I would ever do, sort of thing. And that's created more of an inner peace for you. And because you, like you mentioned, you have released some of those things that were creating those stressors in your life. But yeah, I am going to have to watch this movie again, because I don't remember.
That's okay. It was more just the example, though, right? And I think that's the spirit of it. I totally agree with everything both of you guys are saying. I forgot about that saying, actually, that everything you want is on the other side of fear. I don't even remember why I know that saying, but it's great.
It's a good one.
It is a good one, because again, it's like, often, Lori, you mentioned the non-negotiables, right? Non-negotiables being health and love is a good sort of balanced way of approaching life. But a lot of times our non-negotiables aren't that. It's like, no, my non-negotiable is I need to work fully remotely. I need to have minimum this base salary because I have these issues. I need to, I'm not, and it's impossible for me to talk to my dad about his OCD. It's impossible. It's a non-negotiable. I'm not ever going to talk to him about it, right? So even on the personal front, but those things are going to keep you stressed out. They are kind of fear-based to an extent. And I'm not saying that people should just not make the money they want to make in life, but I'm just saying to have everything super planned out, it can be, can really hold you back, especially in this kind of economy where there are a lot of twists and turns, and you do need to redefine success and maybe even reinvent yourself a little bit in order to thrive out there.
I read a statistic, and I don't want to quote a specific number because I don't remember the exact statistic, but the headline was that more people are becoming entrepreneurs.
Yep.
A little bit tired of this rat race, a little bit tired of the being employed and then laid off, and kind of at the whim of a corporation, and kind of taking it into their own hands and becoming entrepreneurs. So again, I don't want to state a statistic, but I remember reading about it, and I can't remember what the exact number is, but there's been a huge increase. And I think it comes to, a little bit what Shantas was saying too, is like, what's your purpose? Because a lot of times when you're in a job, you can lose sight of that. Or you're chasing a title and money, and you're kind of forgetting, why am I doing this? What's my why? I think we talked about a little bit about a why in one of our previous Success and Wellness podcast, but what's your why? What's your purpose? Why are you getting up every day and doing the hustle and working the 12 hours when it makes sense? What are you doing it for? And I think a strong company with strong company alignment and values, and if you're in line with what they're trying to achieve, it can be great. But when there's misalignment, it can be very tough, and then you feel like you're losing yourself just for a paycheck. And you're trying to, when it comes to time, stuff all this stuff in, spend time with my kids, spend time with my partner, hang out with my friends, get my job done, clean my house, be presentable, hit this mark and this mark in terms of social circles or norms or events that you should be going. And you kind of are like, okay, well, what am I doing this for? I'm going nonstop. And there has been times where I personally feel like seamless from my work to my housework to other work, where it's coming back to a little bit of that meditation or so. But I need to have that time to be just be me. Nobody needs me. Nobody, I need that because it helps you kind of focus and find that purpose, find your why, and help you kind of get through whatever the life's pulling you in 100 different directions. And I feel like in the last few years, it's kind of gotten more and more. I don't know about you guys, but I just feel constantly going many different directions.
Yeah, for sure.
Well
I think
said.
that's a thing. And I'd love to hear how you feel about this too, Shantis, but I feel like that's a thing too, that I'm not going to quote a stat on, but I feel like since COVID, people seem to be saying that the boundaries are a lot thinner between when does work start and end and all that stuff. Yeah. Shantis, sorry, I feel like I interrupted you.
No, you've perfectly positioned sort of the time of COVID in a perfect point, because I was really just going to sort of run with that. But yeah, when I think about change and needing to be agile and, stress and not knowing how to navigate and lead teams in a remote space, and how to train that way as well, when we haven't really been exposed to that. So there was a lot of, there's been from the inception of COVID, I would say, and working entirely remote to now going back into the office 100%. It's been a huge change when it comes to everyone's priorities. With COVID, they're like, oh no, I was able to be at home with my family and, being able to really foster that. And, I don't want to lose that. So I only want to work remote. Or it was horrible. My husband and I were working at entirely remote and we wanted to kill each other. I need to go back in the office, sort of thing. So it's been very interesting to see the different dynamics of individuals and we're looking for positions and the demands around that. I find that, I'm one of them too. I work remotely from home, and that is my choice, and I love it. With the occasional sort of travel to where I need to go for client meetings and stuff. But I wonder what the percentage is now on individuals who really want to work from home as opposed to going back in the office. I know a lot of companies and organizations have lost a lot of really great people because of the in-office model. It's not be. So, how do we navigate around that? It's almost like you give, candy to a whole bunch of people, and then you take that candy away, and you're like, you have to go back in the office now. So it's, I still find that it's a very big percentage in my eyes, who want to work remote or have a lot of that flexibility, so that, your purpose also, portends into your family life. I have more time with my kids. I'm able to be home at a certain hour where we can, have dinner together and have that special time, as opposed to me being in the office 5 days a week and getting home at 7:30, right? Yeah. Missing all of those really valuable, beautiful moments. So went off on a spin, but yes.
No, that's good.
I was going to say, it actually reminds me of exactly what you were saying about the movie of he starts living this different life thinking he wants his old life back. And then he finds this new, beautiful life. And I think maybe in some way corporations are trying to stuff us back into the box of the way it was pre-COVID. And the truth is it's never going to work, because we are different people. We've evolved in this last 5 or 6 years, and we've realized that we can still be meaningful employees and do a great job and be home and spend time with our kids. And that, to me, there was times I missed with my older kids because I was working and they were in daycare in the morning. Then I'd go to work, and then they'd be in daycare after school. And then I'm coming home and I'm getting a little bit of time with them, and then they're going to bed. And then when, COVID changed and I was able to be like, okay, I'm here. I have time with you.
Yeah.
Not just, and when I'm at home, it's not even that you have that much time. You're doing things like getting dinner on the table, getting them bed. It's like you're just always doing, and you're not actually being present. So I think, trying to shove us back into the box, in terms of, many employees, and I don't want to speak for everyone because some people do enjoy working in the office. But I think you can't go back to pre-COVID times. We've evolved, and so has companies since then.
I think that's interesting, though. I think it comes up a lot, right? It comes up a lot as a recruiter when I speak to people, is the sort of like, as a stressor, going into the office, commuting versus working from home. I feel like there's also, it's an interesting debate, right? Because it's gone so far in the other direction, especially in the United States. I speak to a lot of Americans. It's very much more in-office kind of culture. Toronto, where we are, it's better. It's a lot of hybrid roles people are open to, and some remote. But I also feel like there's this thing that's happened where people come straight out of school and say to me, yeah, I don't want to go work in an office. It's like, well, you've never done that either. So it's, and I'm not saying that it's like some sort of rite of passage. I'm just saying I've noticed that as someone who recruits recruiters who've never worked in an office and never benefited from hearing some of the senior people like us, what we say, what we do, having access to us and exist in this vacuum, they just don't learn it. And unfortunately, they think, like Bradley Cooper thinks, that, you know what I mean? Like, he knows what he wants. But they just don't really know the opposite. They haven't done both. They haven't gotten to the point that we're at where we can function. You know what I mean? Like, so it's also dangerous for the future. There's this large gap right now of people who started in recruitment post-COVID. They just don't have the same kinds of skills and experience that someone does at 2-3 years if they're in the office. That's kind of clear. Because they don't have access to people like us, right? Who are the more senior people. It's not anyone's fault. It's just the way things have evolved. But now it's like these people their careers are suffering. They have a year here, a year here, a year here, and no one's ever taking them under their wing and saying, "Hey, let's mentor you." Right? They're just kind of like, "Nah, it's sink or swim. You're only okay. You're not worth it. Bye." So there's this weird, like, individualistic, non-community attitude toward that, where these people are kind of getting quote unquote left behind a little bit. And I feel like I'm on the fence about it. I mean, I've worked remotely since before COVID and I love it, and I'm not going back to an office the rest of my life. So, I'm just saying.
Well, that's faster.
but there are problems too, right? So it's just not it's interesting.
I would say, Rick, and kind of what Shantas was saying, is that the managers have never managed people remotely either.
Well, that's it. Exactly.
So it's like, can you not get that knowledge, or we don't know how to share that knowledge remotely and we only know how to share it in an office setting? I do think that there is benefits to both. And that's why I do think a hybrid model does work, because for me, it's the knowledge, but also some of that socialization, that as much as I like to meet my team members over a team call, human interaction, I do think it's really important for team building, culture building, when it comes to corporations. But, the remote aspect of it is, for certain roles, especially when you're in sales, like we are, it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense to be in office 100% of the time, like either having the remote, hybrid, but at least I think it would behoove many companies to give some of their employees the option, because some do prefer in office or hybrid. I do think that if we know how we work best, we should have the make the decision, as long as we're hitting whatever metrics need to be hit, or you're doing your job effectively. But we have kids that are coming from school, like my kids, they were COVID kids, that they had a couple of years where they weren't even in school. So then, those people are eventually going to be in careers, and that kind of forced them. Like my daughter at 9 had a laptop through the school, which, that never happened before. So I think that there is definitely a push too from, the kids that are coming up that are also going to have that basis of doing things online more.
Yeah.
And from that, I would say that, what I forgot who told me this, but I thought it was brilliant. Where they said, when you have individuals that are younger in their career and all of that, and working from home, and they really want to work from home and have this flexibility and sort of less accountability, it's just a little bit of a challenge sometimes to get them up and running. It's because, when we had COVID, maybe that was their formative time to be able to interact with people and really be coached and mentored when it comes to, okay, this is what you do. You go to the office, you make sure you're not late. This is what you wear, sort of thing, as opposed to being like, everything is online, everything is social. We are glued to our phones. And so we're losing the ability to interact from a human scale, on a human scale, rather. So I thought that was a great observation. Like, that makes sense. If you're having maybe individuals that have come from that space, and you're trying to, coach them, direct them, or what have you, and you're having challenges, that might be why.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It's true. And like, just the experience in life
Yes.
of having to get up at a certain time, get ready, put on office ready clothes or external ready clothes, and go somewhere and be there on time and speak to people, even when you aren't feeling great or whatever else. It is something that we've all done. But I wonder if not doing that has negative impacts as well, right? Of not having to push through that, basically in one's distress tolerance for being in society and living as a human being. You know what I mean? I don't think that people have to suffer per se, but I do think sometimes it's good for us to do something that we don't really feel like doing, and get out of the world and have to socialize and whatever else.
Yeah.
It's a balance that we could lose. And I as much as I love working remotely, and I personally am not going to switch. It sounds super hypocritical, but,
either.
but I also worked in offices for years, 5 days a week. You know what I mean? When I say years, I mean decades, right? Like, so, it's an interesting debate, right? Because like, what if we all worked remotely and robots did manufacturing jobs? Do we even need offices anymore in 10 years, even as little as 10 years? Will they exist? Is that good or bad? You know what I mean? We're getting at the points now where it feels like there's even very big, almost sci-fi-ish questions that are like very tangible as how quickly things are changing, which is both cool and also like maybe should be discussed a little bit to make sure we don't wander down a path and go like, oops, this was a huge mistake because blah,
Well, I think when you look at, for example, kind of what you're saying, or when we went through COVID, Ontario in particular was locked down much longer than many other countries and so the US being, almost fully back in office, that makes sense. They never really closed down to the same extent that we did here in Ontario. We were very strict, couldn't go to movies and stuff. And like the first Leaf game I went to, it was, limited seating, masked. It's, it was very, distant. And then, you have Doug Ford, our premier, coming on, the news a couple of months ago saying, oh, like these lockdowns, these not working in the office has affected our downtown pathway. And I'm like, you're the one who you're the one who kept us locked down for so long, and kind of gave us this permission to work remotely for so long, that you've created this new culture and this new kind of way to go about working, and people don't want to go back down. They're not spending their money on the path. And so that, kind of talking about moving ahead without thinking, how, in the COVID times, everyone was, stressed or de-stressed or panicking in some way, and making shifts in policies that, here we are almost 6 years later, we're almost in 2026, that is still playing out. So I do think it's, beneficial to really think about how these things are going to impact us long term, because, Doug Ford, one year kind of keeping us locked down for as long as he could, to the next saying, okay, people need to go back because the business is suffering. The, downtown core is suffering. Small businesses are closing. Well, yeah, that's what happens. That direct consequence from the policies that he instituted in 2020, 2021, and so on.
For sure. He also pulled the weird move of massively defunding long-term care facilities. And then during COVID, the federal government investigated them to see like, hey, the conditions here are terrible. And he's like, oh, we're investigating this to find out what happened right away. I'm like, well, it was pretty clear. You cut all their funding like a year ago, and now they don't have the staff. I mean, it's
yeah.
well, whatever. The politics of it all, unfortunately, short-term thinking, right? Like lots of short-term thinking. Shantis, what do you think about the whole like thing? Do people need to work in offices? If we went totally the other direction, are we losing anything there?
I don't know. I still think it's kind of, I mean, some people really like that time away to go back into the office, you know, and have that separation from home life to work. And of course, it's a social aspect. It's a tricky one, you know, in the back of my brain, you know, what it would do for our economy, right? If we're like, everyone can work from home, we don't need offices, everyone has a remote office sort of thing. What would that do with real estate and all of that? But I don't know, I can only speak for myself and also for individuals that I've worked with. And like, I really wish it's not even 100% working from home, but that I'm finding the feedback from individuals. It's really just the flexibility. Mm-hmm. Hey, you know, I just want a little bit more flexibility. Maybe, you know, hybrid model would help me better. I find that like three days in the office, 2 days from home is kind of where people lean, where they seem to be a bit happier. 100%, you know, remote or people like me. But for the most part, I find that it's really just that flexibility that they want. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be a happy medium for them to be able to maintain their personal life as well as, you know, kids and all of that. But also have that aspect of being in the office and, you know, being with your peers and having a social aspect.
Yeah, I think, you know, having some autonomy, you know, we're adults. I know it's important to like, you know, have certain rules or, you know, following certain structure. But, you know, in Europe, there's a lot of studies where they're doing the 4 days a week, you know, mm-hmm. where it's not even that. And they're saying people are more productive when they have more time off. And I think that that's just the way that it is. Sometimes when we get overwhelmed and we have so much going on, sometimes it can be hard to focus. So you've got your 40-hour work week, plus your commuting time, plus most people have, you know, life outside or commitments outside. And, you know, even when it comes to the weekend, it's like you have maybe one day where you're cleaning and doing all that stuff, and then maybe one day of social. Maybe one day, if you're lucky, depending on how your life goes, where one day you can do something that's like fun. And that's a really kind of sad way to live. It's like 6 days a week I'm doing work. And then one day of the week, one day of my whole life, I get to enjoy life in some way. So then, you know, you're back to work and you're kind of Monday morning and you're like, oh, it's Monday again. And you know, you're kind of going through life that way. So I do think that there is some benefit to letting people have the autonomy and say, hey, like, and if it makes, I know it sounds weird, but if it makes me happy and I'm going to be more productive in the long run because I'm having the autonomy and the authority to make a decision that's going to work best for my life and I'll be a great employee, you know, you're going to have somebody who's working harder and better than somebody who you're kind of forcing to work extra hours and come into the office. And, you know, they're not going to be a long-term happy employee. And you want retention too when it comes to hiring. It's a big cost when you have employee turnover.
Yes. And you know what, you hit on something that is a bit of a nerve, I think, in this whole discussion of success and wellness, is that there is a little bit of this culture, particularly for people who are not in super high up positions where they're making a ton of money, right? So this is people who are like everyday people who are going to work, who are, you know, in the whole of the middle class, whether they're white collar, blue collar, feel like going to work is almost like a punishment. It's toil. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, Monday again. And then, I only get my one day when I can. But then even I hear from a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, Sunday sucks. Mm-hmm. Sunday doesn't even count because I spend most of Sunday being like, oh, I got to work tomorrow, so I can't do anything. Right. And it's just kind of like, wow, you know, it doesn't sound fun at all. It just sounds like a really toxic culture. And there's this idea of like work is punishment and my life is what's good, my personal life. So I need to work as little as possible in order for it just kind of sounds like, again, it's like Bradley Cooper. It's like, you know, there's other things you can do, man. Like maybe this is not the job for you also. Like, I'm not saying that work's going to be all fun and games, but to just accept this life of toil and punishment as being most of what you're doing, I think everybody should find a way to look for something else or demand better in some way, and avoid working in those environments, because I think a lot of that has to do with the culture of the company and the way that they treat you and so on. If you really feel that terrible about it, I don't think that the nature of work is such that it has to feel bad all the time. You know what I mean? I don't think that it's fundamental. I think it's bad culture, and I think that it's like factors that are changeable or improvable at least a little bit, you know?
And I think it does kind of go sometimes with what you endure. You know, sometimes when you're in school and you're enduring a bad teacher or a bad situation, and you kind of just, you're kind of forced to kind of get through the year or whatever. And sometimes you can make changes with school, but really it's kind of conditioning you. And then your first job, sometimes it's minimum wage, you get all the grunt stuff, and so you kind of become conditioned, I think, as you go through life, especially in your first few jobs, that you just got to do what you got to do. You got to say yes to everything, and you got to show that you're worthy of your paycheck. You got to work hard and show them you're going to do this and this and this, and it starts to get kind of ingrained in you. That you got to sell yourself almost to whoever your boss is. And I think as you get a little bit older, it doesn't even have to be age per se, but maybe a little bit wiser, how important it is to align yourself with the company that supports your values. Almost every company has some sort of statement or some sort of core mission. And I think it's really important when you're looking for a job is, what is their mission? What do they stand for? And is that like in alignment with who I am? Because yes, it's important to get a paycheck and have that meaning, but it is really important to enjoy going to work every single day. There's going to be hard times because, hey, it's called work for a reason. But for the most part, you should be able to find something that aligns with your personality and like who you are as a person, and a company that also aligns with it. And I think that does make a big difference in not dreading the Mondays, and like living for the weekend or living for that one day a week when you have some sort of sense of freedom.
Agreed. I feel like I agree with you that I think it's built up over time, but I almost think that there's like I myself didn't really, I dropped out of school to start a record label, right? So I started, music stuff was my main, that's who I am. I make music, and I had a fair degree of success, but I also needed money to do things, to have my own label. I wasn't depending on anybody else. So I did tech sales and I did all these other jobs, but I saw that as, that's not me. Right. So I had what I would call not the best attitude toward it. I still did well, but I was doing it for something else. I was doing it for another life. I wasn't seeing that as my life. I was seeing that as my toil. So for me, there's a very obvious example of, I do this so that I can do that. That's me living for real. And marrying the two together and saying I could do a job that I actually like doing and want to put in the time and the effort for, and it doesn't feel like work or whatever. Sure, sometimes it feels like work. I only felt that when I found recruitment, and didn't expect to find that. And I mean, maybe I'm one of the lucky ones. Like, I found it in my I was 32 years old when I started recruiting, like 15 years ago or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's like, but I found something where I'm like, I like doing this. I put in time voluntarily, but 8 hours of recruiting in a day is easier for me to do than 15 minutes of some of those other jobs. Not that they're bad jobs, they're just a bad fit. I was like, oh my God, is it 9:30? Can I go on break yet? Is it 9:30? Oh, it's still 8:45. How is it still 8:45? Whereas now I'm like, oh my God, it's already 4 p.m. How did the day, you know what I mean? So it's very relative, way more than I thought back when I was younger, right? Way more than I thought. It was like, I'm doing music or I'm doing nothing. I was Bradley Coopering my life a little bit, right? It's got to be this or that's it. And I ended up going to my 30s until I discovered, hey, you know what? I actually really like doing this. And sure, some days are hard, some days are disappointing or whatever, but it's not the same as dreading it, where you're like, when's my break? You know what I mean? It's that's no life. And especially now that people aren't going to, work 5-10 years in the workforce and buy a big house and whatever else like people did in the 60s, 70s, right? There's not that reward also. So I feel like younger people are just opting out of the traditional workforce. Yeah. And I don't know what that's going to mean either.
You brought up an interesting point about recruitment that I just want to say. So, for that fact, because I always have this conversation, usually, it usually happens around happy hour where I like bump into someone and I immediately have my recruiter hat on.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh, well, why'd you get into recruitment? I'm like, there is no school for recruitment. I would say if you're coming from a psychology background, but also a business background, you might be able to navigate a lot of conversations, better, I would say. But for the most part, like I find that a lot of people get into recruitment because they like the variety of what it offers you. It offers you, you're able to talk to people. You have that social ability. Doesn't mean to say that you need to be an extrovert all the time. I'm certainly not. But you enjoy the personal ability. You enjoy the administrative. You enjoy the chase. You enjoy the hunt. Finding great people, marrying the two, and ensuring that your client's happy. So I find that this is one of the few professions that I've been in, and that's why I've been in it so long, is because it's always different. There's always something for me to do, and I'm never bored. So, I mean, that I can't say that about every single, like if I was just recruiting, just one note, just recruiting, I'd probably still be pretty happy, actually, because I do like recruiting. But, if it's one note and doing the same thing every day, I think, naturally you want to kind of shake it up and have something different to do. So to all the listeners who want, maybe have a type A personality and you really love to have different aspects to keep you busy, sometimes too busy, but it's still fun. I would say recruitment is definitely, it was my way to go to find that balance with a lot of the things that I loved. How about you, Rick?
For why I discovered recruitment?
Yeah. I know that you had it when you were, of course, you mentioned that you were a musician, but also what were the key aspects of why you really enjoyed it?
I think I did a lot of stuff, right? So I did a lot of stuff, but what I did that I loved doing in music, some people just sit down and learn an instrument and they play that instrument and they're like, whatever, pay me to play guitar, that's all I want to do. But I didn't. I liked playing different instruments. I liked putting bands together. I produced records. I learned how to use those music softwares. I started a label. I went on tours. So a lot of it was getting people together and the right people together and starting something that you believe in, a band or a label, and like pushing it through. So, but I feel like a lot of those things work really well in recruitment. All we did was take away the music aspect, and I feel like I'm doing the exact same stuff that I was doing, that I had already co-branded in my head, that I loved doing. That was like my thing I did for gratification, like for satisfaction. So it was weirdly, and I hadn't pictured, what if we took music out of everything you do right now, and then we'll pay you all this money to do it if you do it well. And it's like, what? That's incredible.
Interesting.
What about you, Lori?
I think like staffing kind of fell into my lap a little bit. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to their careers, they think it's going to go one way like you did, Rick, and life kind of takes them on a different course. So I'd say, keep yourself open-minded as well, because I think when we kind of try to pigeonhole ourselves and what we think might be good for us, we may turn a blind eye to good opportunities. And I think for me, the sales aspect of staffing, I think there's a little bit of the sales and a little bit of the staffing aspect to it. So I do think I'm a people person. That's kind of grown over the years. I wouldn't say as a teenager, I was more of an introvert and I wasn't necessarily super communicative, but over the years with different jobs I've had to be in the public facing, serving clients, serving customers, selling. And I think it just kind of grew. And then with the staffing element, you get to deal with a lot of people, which I do like, and helping people with their careers. And because I'm somebody who is a little bit more spiritual, I'm not saying you can do this job and not be spiritual, but for me, that spirituality, helping people find their purpose, really helping them connect with a career and making that match, I feel really successful when I help somebody find their job. Because as much as we might fight the job in terms of, hey, this is a job and we need to do it to get paid, it is a big sense of who we are. And if we're going to work every day and we feel good and we feel fulfilled and we feel happy, that's going to play out in the rest of our lives, because we are at work a lot of our days, 5 days a week, sometimes more depending on whether you work overtime or the role that you have, but we put a lot into our career. So it's really important to have feel some joy when you're there and feel like you're finding that purpose too. So when I can help people find that also helps me feel successful. And I think that's why I've stayed, and I continue to love staffing.
Yeah, likewise. Shantas, you actually are an example of one of these kinds of things, of staying open-minded and just getting with people who you get along with very well. Like, you've made a curveball in your career lately to a completely different vertical that you didn't expect, I don't think.
Yeah.
That's like a testament to, I think, what we're talking about being open-minded and going for things that aren't necessarily the on paper obvious. How are you feeling about all that?
Yeah, no, I think, Rick, we remember our conversations around this. You're like, I have this role for business development manager. I'm like, no, I'm a recruiter. I'm a recruiter. That's what I do. So he's like, just listen. It might be, your vibe when it comes to the company. And so, yeah, absolutely. I'm always love to hear whatever anyone has to say, and consider options and opportunities. And it kind of came at a right time, because also my previous position was mandating everyone to go in the office full time, and
Dun, dun, dun.
it just didn't work for me. Unfortunately, I had moved out of Vancouver, so yeah, I kind of went in with open eyes, like it could be anything, and it just the whole process just ended up going really well. And I'm like, these people seem too nice. Like they just seem too nice, but really cool. And there was a very engaging aspect and a very real human, if that makes sense, aspect, where you could just kind of be yourself and talk exactly about what you want and what you don't want and all of that stuff. So it ended up working out really well. And yeah, I just had a call with Rick not too long ago. He's like, how's it going over there? And I'm like, I think I found my tribe. I think I found my personality tribe. I've never been able to say that with an organization before, in some ways. But for the most part, I'm like, I think I'm really excited to continue on in this organization and see what unflourishes, sort of thing. And so, I've had to get out of my comfort zone, and business development, of course, new business. But I'm doing a lot of training, and I have a great mentors when it comes to leading me along that path, but also bringing apart the recruitment experience that I have had, which makes it really nice, because you're able to have conversations in a bit more holistic way. I would rather say, like, hey, if a client is expressing challenges of why they haven't, been able to fill this role for a certain amount of time, sort of thing, I felt that there's a little bit more value add in knowing the other side of it, just on the recruitment side. So no, I have huge appreciation for Rick and Raymond George, but
Awesome.
it was definitely not something that I thought that I would accept.
But I meant, both you guys mentioned this now, Shantas and you, Lori, just a moment ago, right? Is that that like human element of people working together? I think a lot of times people ignore the human factors when they decide what they want for themselves, what their picture of success is, right? It has to do with money. It has to do with what the title is. It has to do with, I'm going to have a house here, and I want to do this or that or the other thing. And the human element is not really part of the equation when it comes to career and success. And I think that's a big mistake, right? I mean, I think we're examples of learning that it's like, yeah, if that's not part of it, then guess what? If you ignore that part of it, then guess what? You might be really unhappy with the results, because you're a human being who has to spend time with other humans all day.
Yeah, I think in the end of the day, it sounds like you found a great company for yourself. So that's always exciting when you start somewhere new and you feel aligned. And I think that onboarding part, can be very much a make it or break it. You start with a new company, and how they treat you and how they onboard you, and that mentorship can really keep you excited or be like, I don't know what's happening. So I think that's where you're going to really see that human connection, that value of, okay, that on paper, everything sounded very great when I was in the interview process, but now that I'm in here and I'm meeting the people and seeing the culture, how is that fit? So I would say anybody who's in an interview process or interviewing right now, that they should be asking those deeper questions about the culture of the company, because I've certainly made that mistake before, where everything seemed great, the offer, everything on paper and in interviews seemed really great, but then that maybe I didn't dig as deep as I should have in terms of the cultural and the alignment, and not necessarily the day to day. I think that is important, but like, who am I going to be working for and with?
Yeah.
And what's that like? Because again, you're there all the time. That's your job, and you do need to find that alignment. And I know when you're in a job search and things are, you know, hard to get an interview right now, you can just jump at the opportunity, but you don't want to be, you know, back where you were a few months ago. So talk about onboard, ask those questions too. I'm sure both of you being in recruitment, but ask the questions. What's the culture like? What are my first few days going to be like? Am I going to be mentored? Is the training in person? Because even if you are remote, I do think that training in person could really help as well. I'm not sure with you, Shantas, is it, I know you said you were going to go back full time into the, like your old role. Is this hybrid now, or are you remote? You said
I'm 100% remote.
Okay.
Yeah, we traveled to Vancouver when needed, which is great. But yeah, I mean, like piggybacking on what you mentioned, you know, to ask those questions, ask the difficult questions as well. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. Like,
Seriously.
what does it look like? You know, for within my first 3 months, what are my hurdles or what are my challenges going to be? What can you foresee, you know, is going to be, you know, what would be a success in your eyes in my first 3 to 6 months, sort of thing. So I find that, you know, in my earlier years in my career, I wouldn't ask those questions because I just wanted the job. I just want the job. I just want to impress you and, you know, get in. And then all of a sudden you realize that, oh, shoot, you know, I could have asked clearer questions to give me an insight. I remember receiving a position where I had 2 interviews, but never met with the person I would be reporting to, which is interesting. And even that, it's one of those things you're kind of muddling through, I think, and you just want the job. But then realizing, oh goodness, okay, I'm reporting into an individual that maybe, I would really have had a lot of value to be able to meet and to see who I was working with day in, day out. So I think, you know, the biggest learning lesson, at least in my own career, is to ask those hard questions. An employer will either appreciate it or run. It's one of those 2 things, but you'll know right away, you know, if they're dodging the question or what have you, that kind of gives you clearer insight on maybe what kind of organization you were joining and maybe the team that you would be a part of. But that's my little piece of advice.
And I would say, sorry to cut you off, Rick, but in recruitment and in staffing, I think that that's some of the more valuable things that I've learned, because we're coaching people that we're working with on how to navigate and work through those tough questions and situations. And it also gives us insight too when it comes to our own career and how to navigate. It can be a little bit harder when you're doing it for yourself. It was nice to work with, you know, people like Rick, even when you're in recruitment space, you know, to have an advocate, to have somebody, you know, in your corner and help you get through some, you know, make sure you're asking those tough questions. So I would say, if you have a chance, anybody work with recruiters if you can, because they're amazing. They're amazing at their jobs.
Agreed. Both of you guys, a great argument to work with a recruiter, to find one that you get along with, who you think gets you, that you get each other, and you can communicate well. And also, this is a big mistake that I made in the past, in my past life before I started recruiting. I didn't ever look for jobs or entertain recruitment calls while I was working that job. I always waited until I was absolutely ready to leave, or something changed or whatever, and then I needed a job. And so then you put yourself in that mode, like you're saying, Shantas, just kind of like, what do you need me to say to get this job? Because I need a job right now, and I need a job yesterday. So what do you want to hear? Okay, cool. Here it is. I got the job. Fantastic. And I'm not thinking even, is this a good idea? Like, do I get along with any of these people? Terrible mistake, because that's where you really lose a lot of years of your life in some cases, right? Just doing something quickly because you need it, and you're not taking the time to be like, do I belong here? Does this make any sense at all for me to spend 40 hours a week plus maybe, you know, with these people doing this? So So yeah, and you get that luxury when you actually explore what's out there before you're in a desperate situation. So if you're one of the people who's like, no, I'm happy I have my blinders on and I don't want to check anything out, I would advise against that. I think
definitely. Like I've had some good opportunity. Actually, getting into staffing was through a recruitment email. Like it was, they had a different role in mind for me. I took the call and the gentleman was like, you know what, maybe have you ever thought about staffing? Like, and at that point I was like, what is staffing? You know, I didn't really know what staffing was. And to be honest, it's a great career if anyone is thinking about getting into it, but work with a recruiter. It can open your eyes to an industry you've never seen before. Because again, we tend to have a little bit of blinders on in terms of what we think we're going to be good at. You know, you can get roles that might be a little bit more senior than what the role you're in currently. And certainly if you work with a recruiter and you don't move forward with the process, that's not a loss. That's you're on their radar and there could be other opportunities. So I do think that there's a bit of a hesitancy to work with recruiters. I'm not sure now that I'm in it, I'm the same. I don't, you know, I don't know why I didn't try earlier to work with a team or with an agency or with a recruiter, because having, you know, even one good recruiter in your pocket can really make a difference in your career.
It's true, it can. And somehow we've already hit time. So these always fly by.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to both you guys. Thanks, Shantis, and thanks, Lori, for being here. You guys are listening to Recruiting EQ. Please join us every Wednesday at noon, or after the fact. Go anywhere you find your podcast. If you can't find this podcast on Spotify, whatever else, DM me, and I will fix that problem immediately. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.